What if I told you that you wouldn't survive even 24 hours in the medieval times? I'm not talking about dragons or knights in shining armor. I'm talking about the brutal, disgusting reality that would kill you faster than you can say, Game of Thrones. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning, but instead of your cozy bedroom, you're lying on a pile of straw in the year 1347. The smell hits you first. A nauseating cocktail of human waste, rotting food, and unwashed bodies that makes you gag instantly. You think you're tough? You think you could handle it? Think again. Because what I am about to tell you will make you kiss the ground you walk on in the 21st century. The medieval period wasn't just harsh. It was a death trap designed to eliminate the weak. And spoiler alert, compared to them, you are the weak. Every single thing you take for granted today, from the water you drink to the air you breathe, would become your worst enemy. And trust me, by the time I'm done explaining what would happen to you in just the first few hours, you'll be thanking every scientist, doctor, and engineer who made modern life possible. So buckle up, because we're about to take a trip to hell, and it's called the Middle Ages. Point 1. Water and food crisis. Let's start with something simple. You're thirsty. In 2024, you turn on a tap and get clean, drinkable water. In medieval times? Congratulations, you just signed your death warrant. The water sources were basically open sewers. Rivers, wells, and streams were contaminated with human and animal waste, dead bodies, and industrial runoff from tanneries and blacksmiths. Drinking water meant drinking cholera, dysentery, and typhoid fever, all in one refreshing gulp. But here's the kicker. You have to drink something, right? So what did medieval people drink? Beer and wine. Even children drank weak beer because it was literally safer than water. But wait, you don't know how to brew beer in 1347, do you? You're hungry, so you look around for something to eat. You're screwed. Now let's talk about food. The bread? It's made with rye that as often infected with ergot fungus eat that, and you experience hallucinations, convulsions, and gangrene. The meat? It's been sitting in the sun for days without refrigeration, crawling with maggots and bacteria that would send you into septic shock within hours. Vegetables? Good luck finding any that aren't rotting or covered in human fertilizer. Yes, they used human waste as fertilizer. And here's the really fun part. There's no way to tell if food is safe. No expiration dates, no health inspectors, no refrigeration. You're basically playing Russian roulette with every bite. The average medieval person had constant stomach problems, parasites, and malnutrition. But you? Your modern digestive system has never encountered these medieval superbugs. You'd be projectile vomiting and experiencing explosive diarrhea within hours, leading to severe dehydration. And remember, there's no clean water to rehydrate with. It's a vicious cycle that ends in death. But wait, it gets worse. Point 2. Deadly disease threats. Okay, so you've somehow survived the first few hours without dying from food poisoning or cholera. Congratulations. But here's where things get really fun. Welcome to the disease lottery, where every breath you take could be your last. Picture this. You're walking through a medieval town, and suddenly you notice people around you coughing up blood, covered in black boils the size of tennis balls, and literally rotting alive. You've just entered ground zero of the Black Death, the plague that wiped out 1/3 of Europe's entire population. And guess what? You have zero immunity to it. None. Your modern immune system is like a spoiled rich kid who's never seen real danger. Medieval people had been battling these diseases for generations, building up some resistance through sheer survival of the fittest. You're fresh meat. The plague spreads through fleas on rats, and medieval towns were basically rat paradise. No pest control, garbage everywhere, and buildings so poorly constructed that rats lived in the walls. One flea bite and you're done. But wait, there's more. Smallpox was running rampant, leaving survivors looking like walking nightmares with faces full of permanent scars. Tuberculosis was called consumption because it literally consumed people from the inside out. Leprosy was so common, they had entire colonies of people whose fingers and toes were falling off. And here's the kicker. There were no antibiotics, no vaccines, no painkillers, no anesthesia. When you got sick, your treatment options were pray, bleed yourself with leeches, or drink mercury. Yes, mercury, the stuff that's literally poison. Medieval doctors thought illness was caused by bad air or an imbalance of bodily fluids. So they'd drill holes in your skull to let the demons out, or make you vomit until you passed out. The mortality rate for any serious illness was basically 90%. But here is what would really kill you. Your complete lack of basic hygiene knowledge that medieval people took for granted. You don't know which plants are medicinal and which are deadly. You don't know the signs of plague versus typhus versus dysentery. You're walking around like a disease magnet in a world where death is literally in the air. Point 3. Social and legal dangers. Alright, let's say by some miracle, you've survived the contaminated water, rotten food, and plague-infested air. Now comes the part that would absolutely destroy you, the people themselves. Medieval society wasn't just brutal. It was a paranoid, superstitious nightmare where being different meant being dead. And you're about as different as it gets. First off, you don't speak Middle English. You sound like a complete foreigner, which immediately makes you suspicious. In a world where strangers were automatically assumed to be spies, thieves, or worse, your modern accent would mark you for death. But here's where it gets really terrifying. Your knowledge of basic science would literally get you burned alive as a witch. You know the earth is round? Heresy. You know about germs? Witchcraft. You try to help someone by suggesting they wash their hands? You're clearly in league with the devil. The Catholic Church controlled everything, and questioning their teachings was a death sentence. The Inquisition was real, and they had creative ways of making you confess to crimes you didn't commit. We're talking about torture devices that would make horror movies look like Disney films. The rack, the Iron Maiden, being slowly crushed by stones, and that was just the warm-up. But wait, there's more social nightmare fuel. You have no family connections, no guild membership, no lord to protect you. In medieval society, you were literally nothing without these social bonds. You'd be classified as a vagrant, which meant you could be enslaved, imprisoned, or killed on sight. No trial, no rights, no appeals. And let's talk about the legal system. It was basically legalized murder. Trial by combat was real. Trial by ordeal was real. They'd make you grab a red-hot iron bar, and if your burns didn't heal properly, you were guilty. If you sank and drowned, congratulations, you were innocent. They'd throw you in water, and if you floated, you were a witch. The concept of innocent until proven guilty didn't exist. You were guilty until you could prove otherwise, usually through supernatural means. And here's the kicker. Bandits and criminals roamed freely. There was no police force, no FBI, no 911 to call. If someone decided to rob, rape, or murder you, your only hope was that maybe someone nearby would help. Spoiler alert, they probably wouldn't, because helping strangers was dangerous and stupid. You're basically a walking target with no protection, no rights, and no hope of justice. Medieval society would chew you up and spit you out before lunch. Point 4. Extreme environmental conditions. So you've miraculously dodged death by disease, avoided being burned as a witch, and somehow found food that won't kill you instantly. Now let's talk about something you probably never even considered. The environment itself is trying to murder you 24/7. Welcome to a world where weather isn't just inconvenient, it's literally a death sentence. First, let's talk about the cold. Medieval winters weren't just chilly, they were apocalyptic. The Little Ice Age was in full swing, bringing temperatures that would make modern winters look like tropical vacations. And guess what? No central heating, no electric blankets, no insulated homes. Houses were basically wooden boxes with holes in them. The windows were just openings covered with animal skins or oiled cloth. Heat came from a single fireplace that filled the room with toxic smoke, because chimneys were luxury items most people couldn't afford. You'd literally have to choose between freezing to death or suffocating from smoke inhalation. But here's the really fun part. You have no weather prediction. No weather apps, no meteorologists, no satellite imagery. A sudden storm could kill you in minutes, and you'd have zero warning. Medieval people learned to read natural signs through generations of experience. You'd walk straight into a blizzard wearing whatever rags you could find. And let's talk about summer, because it wasn't any better. No air conditioning meant that heat waves were mass casualty events. People died from heat stroke regularly, and there was no way to cool down except maybe jumping in that contaminated river we talked about earlier. The air quality was absolutely horrific. Cities burned wood, coal, and basically anything combustible for fuel. The smoke was so thick you could barely see across the street. Breathing was like smoking a pack of cigarettes every hour. Your modern lungs, used to relatively clean air, would be in constant distress. You'd develop respiratory problems within days that would plague you for the rest of your very short life. And here's something that would drive you absolutely insane: the darkness. No electric lights meant when the sun went down, you were basically blind. Candles were expensive, oil lamps were dangerous fire hazards, and most people just went to bed when it got dark because there was literally nothing else to do. Your circadian rhythm would be completely destroyed. You have no idea how to prepare for any of this. But the worst part? You don't know how to make proper winter clothing, how to preserve food for harsh seasons, or how to read weather patterns. You read completely helpless against forces that medieval people had learned to survive through centuries of trial and error. Mother Nature wasn't just indifferent in medieval times. She was actively hostile, and you're completely defenseless. Even if you were a king or queen, in medieval times, your life would still be a living nightmare compared to what an average person experiences today. But here is the most shocking revelation that will absolutely blow your mind, even if you were born into nobility. Let me paint you a picture that will shatter everything you thought you knew about medieval luxury. The richest, most powerful people in medieval Europe lived in conditions that would make a modern homeless shelter look like a five-star resort. Kings and queens slept in beds crawling with lice, fleas, and bedbugs, and lived in castles that were basically giant stone refrigerators filled with the stench of human waste. They ate off plates that were never properly cleaned, drank wine that was often contaminated. Even royalty had a life expectancy of only 30 to 35 years. Think about that for a second. If you were lucky enough to be born into the absolute pinnacle of medieval society, you'd still be dead before your 40th birthday. The Black Prince of England, one of the most celebrated warriors of his time, died at 46 and was considered to have lived an exceptionally long life. Most nobles died in their 20s and 30s from diseases that we cure with a simple antibiotic today. But here's what's really mind-blowing. A minimum wage worker today has access to luxuries that medieval emperors could never even dream of. You flip a switch and light floods your room instantly. You turn a handle and clean. Drinkable water flows endlessly. You open a box and food that's been preserved perfectly for months is ready to eat. You have access to literally all of human knowledge and entertainment in your pocket. You feel sick? You take a pill and feel better in hours. You're bored? The poorest person in America today eats better, lives longer, and has more comfort than the richest king in medieval times. A fast food burger has better quality control than a royal feast. Your smartphone has more computing power than entire medieval kingdoms had collective knowledge. You complain about your apartment being small? Medieval royalty shared their bedrooms with servants, animals, and whatever relatives happened to be visiting. Privacy was a concept that didn't exist, even for kings. This isn't just about being grateful. This is about understanding that you are literally living like a god compared to anyone from the medieval period. Every single day of your modern life contains miracles that would have been considered impossible magic just 700 years ago. Closing. So the next time you complain about your Wi-Fi being slow, your coffee being too cold, or your commute taking too long, remember this. You are living in the most incredible time in human history. You have won the ultimate lottery just by being born in the 21st century. Every breath you take is cleaner than the air medieval royalty breathed. Every sip of water you drink is safer than what kings and queens had access to. Every meal you eat has been through more safety checks than entire medieval kingdoms had knowledge about food safety. You are literally more powerful than any medieval emperor because you have access to knowledge, medicine, and technology that would have been considered godlike magic. Your worst day in modern times is still infinitely better than the best day anyone could have had in the medieval period. So here's my challenge to you. Stop taking your modern miracles for granted. Appreciate the scientists who gave you clean water, the doctors who created the medicines that keep you alive, the engineers who built the infrastructure that makes your comfortable life possible. Every time you flip a light switch, remember that you're performing magic that medieval people would have died for. Every time you take an aspirin for a headache, remember that you just cured something that would have been a death sentence 700 years ago. And the next time someone romanticizes the good old days or talks about how much simpler life was back then, you can tell them the truth. There were no good old days. There was only survival, suffering, and an early death. You wouldn't last 24 hours in the medieval period, and honestly, that's the best news you'll hear all day. Because it means you're living in paradise, and you didn't even realize it. Welcome to the future, also known as right now. Appreciate it, because billions of people throughout history would have given anything to trade places with you for just one day of your ordinary modern life.